which is that as Florida governor in year one, I will push for the first of its kind sin tax. If you are a so-called only creator in Florida, you are going to pay 50% to the state.
Okay, so for once, the timeline actually blinked and did something right. In the middle of the Only Friends dystopia where shame is optional and self-respect is on a payment plan, someone floated the idea of a sin tax. And no, not the fun historical kind, the kind that quietly asks, should we maybe stop incentivizing this mess? I did not expect policy to be the plot twist of the year, but here we are.
I want to break some news here with you, Joel. I hadn't planned to do this, but allow me to do it, which is that as Florida governor in year one, I will push for the first of its kind sin tax. If you are a so-called creator in Florida, you are going to pay 50% to the state on whatever you so-called earn via that online degeneracy platform. And that money will be used to fund our education system, will be used to fund the crisis pregnancy centers, will be used to fund the first of its kind mental health czar for men in particular, because men have been told for far too long that they are guilty of masculinity, that they are guilty of all of society's ills. And I'm not going to stand for that slanderous lie. What I'm going to do is I am going to end this lie that toxic masculinity is responsible for all these sins and ills of society. If you're an model and you reside in Florida, get ready to pay 50% of your income to the state. It is called a sin tax because it is a sin, number one. But the purpose of a sin tax in economics is to disincentivize and deter a behavior. And yes, as Florida governor, I don't want women who could otherwise be mothers, raising families, rearing children. I don't want them to be selling their to sick men online. And I don't want young, impressionable men who have strayed from Christ, who have strayed from our Lord and Savior, to be told and drawn into lust and have their entire brain rewired. We will raise hundreds of millions of dollars of income on the sin tax. And if we don't, Joel, if we don't raise that income, you know what it'll mean? It will mean something even greater has materialized for the young women and young men of our state, that the industry and its supporters, and you know who those supporters are, Joel, that its supporters will have been utterly robbed of their ability to rob us, not just of our hard-earned wages, but of our commitment to Christ.
So what happened was a Florida gubernatorial candidate looked at the Only Friends economy and decided to treat it like a public policy problem instead of a vibe. James Fishback comes out and proposes a 50% sin tax on Only Friends creators operating in Florida, not on the platform, on the creators themselves. Half of whatever they earn goes straight to the state. He does not sugarcoat it either. He calls Only Friends an online degeneracy platform and says the tax revenue would be used to fund Florida's education system. That part is important because this is not framed as punishment for punishment's sake. It's framed as redirection. If this activity is going to exist, the state is going to extract value from it and move that money somewhere socially defensible. Then he says the quiet part out loud. He claims the tax would raise hundreds of millions of dollars. But if it doesn't, he says that's even better because it would mean young men and women found something else to do, something more productive, something that does not rely on monetizing themselves online. That tells you exactly what this is. This isn't a revenue policy. A 50% tax is not meant to coexist with an industry. It is meant to shrink it. This is something closer to cigarettes tax than income tax. The goal is deterrence, not balance. And that is why this proposal hit a nerve. For years, politicians have treated Only Friends like a third rail. Everyone knows the ecosystem has social costs, privacy costs, mental health costs, long-term reputation damage, but no one wants to be the first to say it out loud because it sounds judgmental. Fishback doesn't care. He is saying if the state is going to tolerate it, it will either pay for schools or become economically unattractive enough that people walk away on their own. James is not coming slow at all. In another clip, he directly names Sophie Rain. He says that under a 50% Only Friends sin tax, Sophie Rain alone would owe around $42 million to the state of Florida. That number is insane. Full stop. But that is not even the point he's making. He says that money will be redirected into two specific places. First, increasing public school teachers' salaries. Second, improving the quality of school lunches. No vague programs, no abstract social good. Teachers get paid more, kids get better food. And here is why this hits. This is not framed as revenge. It is framed as trade-offs. An industry that generates massive private income absorbs a massive public cost. In return, two of the most neglected parts of the system get funded properly. And yes, that means OnlyFriends creators take a hit. A huge one. I mean, that's the whole point. This is not a tax designed to coexist with the industry. It is designed to either extract serious value from it or make it far less attractive to participate in. From his perspective, both outcomes are acceptable. Either the state gets tens of hundreds of millions for schools, or fewer people choose to build their income around that platform. If you agree, hit subscribe. If you disagree, drop a comment and explain why. I'd love to hear your opinion. Bizarrely enough, Sophie Rain fired back in the dumbest way possible. Her response was basically, sounds like you subscribed and got buyer's remorse after dropping your annual salary on an OnlyFriends girl. And that right there is the problem. That is the best defense she could come up with. Not an argument about policy, not about legality, not even about economics, just the default insult. You're broke, you're mad, you paid me. First of all, buyer's remorse implies someone made a meaningful investment. Nobody on earth is sitting awake at night regretting $5.99 spent on bikini pictures. This is not a mortgage. This is not a stock portfolio. You are not the S&P 500. Second, the idea that criticism only comes from customers is pure cope. People criticize cigarettes without smoking them. People criticize gambling without losing money. You do not need to buy the product to recognize the damage. And third, this response exposes the bubble she lives in. She genuinely thinks the only people who question this industry are bitter men who got rejected by a paywall. Not parents, not teachers, not policymakers, not anyone looking at long-term social fallout. Just jealous losers, apparently. In another clip, Sophie Rain suddenly discovers her pastoral era. She says she wants to quit OnlyFans. Buy a farm, 20 acres, cows, the whole cottagecore reset fantasy. And I'm sorry, but come on, just come on. Then she says she feels guilty because she's in the content house but cannot devote all her energy to it like the other girls because they're working. That's the word she used.
I'm like, I don't want to be doing this. Like, I want to focus on myself. I currently have a house in Tampa. I have 20 acres. I'm trying to build a farm. I have 20 acres and I want to build a farm. I want to get cows. I want to build stables and everything.
If you had cows.
And that's what I want to focus on. And I felt guilty, like, also being in the Bob House, but not being able to devote my entire time to them because they'll get together and work all day. And if I can't be there certain days and, like, I have other business to take care of that I'd rather be doing, I'm gonna leave the Bob House and focus on that.
And that is where it completely falls apart. Standing in front of a phone, hitting record, posting a clip, checking tips, that's not work. That's not even labor. That's not even remotely comparable to what most people mean when they say work. And the irony is brutal. She wants a farm. Do you know what a farm actually is? Do you know what farm work even entails? 4 a.m. mornings, physical strain, weather, animals dying, real responsibility, real effort, no algorithm, no paywall, no simps buffering your income. She talks about guilt, but not in a reflective way. It is in a guilt framed around not hustling hard enough in a house where everyone is monetizing themselves full time. That is not moral awareness. That is burnout mixed with delusion. And then Sophie Rain fires back again.
Never in my whole life did I think that I would wake up and see a Florida politician trying to start beef with me for clout. So he's proposing a sin tax on bops where we would have to pay 50% to the state on top of the 37 I already paid to the government. And I would be more than happy to pay that if multi-billion-dollar corporations were also being properly taxed. But surprise, they're not. I never usually get into politics, but there are clearly better ways to raise funds from actual corrupt businesses in our country. I think that people also fail to realize that there are so many creators on this platform that do this job because they're struggling. So to tax them like that when they're literally doing it just to support their families is sad. I would much rather continue donating directly to people in need because we all really know where our tax dollars go.
Not with a tweet this time, but with a full video. Same playbook though, just louder. Suddenly it's sympathy mode. Suddenly she's the victim. Again, suddenly it's Why not tax big corporations instead of creators? Here is the problem, Sophie Rain. You are not a normal creator. You are not a YouTuber. You're not an artist. You're not someone making commentary or skits or music. You are a highly visible, heavily promoted face of an industry that actively pulls young women into monetizing their bodies online. That distinction matters. You glamorized it. You flexed the money. You posted the numbers. You sold the fantasy that the moment someone turns 18, they can open an account, post their body, and get rich overnight. No consequences, no long-term costs, no downside. And that is why this conversation exists, because a lot of younger women do not see the stalking, the burnout, the permanence, the reputation damage, or the people you attract. They see the highlights you push, the money screenshots, the lifestyle, the validation. That makes you influential, and influence comes with responsibility whether you like it or not. So when repercussions finally show up in the form of regulation, taxation, or public pushback, you do not get to suddenly pretend you're just a small creator being bullied by the system. You benefited from the system when it was unregulated. You promoted it when it was profitable. You normalized it when it was trendy. Now that someone is questioning it, now it's unfair. No. You cannot sell the dream and then cry when reality shows up. If you want to argue tax policy, argue it properly, but the victim card does not work here. Putting all that out there, y'all already know the internet had to say a lot about this, so let's take a look. How are teachers making less than OnlyFriends models? That is the entire problem in one sentence. People who educate kids, manage classrooms, buy supplies out of pocket, and shape the next generation are scraping by. Meanwhile, someone with a ring light, a phone, and a PayPal link can out-earn them by orders of magnitude. Syntax is crazy. This is such a good policy. OnlyFriends is rotting my generation. It's horrible, and the damage it will cause in the future is catastrophic. OnlyFriends is not just another app. It rewires incentives. It teaches people that attention beats skill, that shortcuts beat craft, and that validation is a career path. And the damage doesn't show up immediately, it shows up later in distorted expectations, in burnout, and people realizing too late that the internet never forgets and the money was never as stable as it looked. So to sum it up, a Florida gubernatorial candidate proposes a 50% sin tax on OnlyFriends creators, saying the money should fund public schools, teacher pay, and better lunches. One of the biggest creators fires back with insults, victim framing, and deflection instead of addressing the policy. The pushback exposes the real tension. An industry built on glamorizing fast money is being treated like a social cost for the first time. Supporters see deterrence and redistribution, critics see punishment. Either way, the unregulated era is being challenged, and the people who profited most are suddenly very uncomfortable with consequences.